Allow me to present my daughters, Arabella and Cecily.
My mother named me Eleanor.
Lord Benedict Harcourt presented his daughters to the Duke as though displaying 3 portraits. Lady Arabella Harcourt, he announced. My eldest. Arabella curtsied in white silk, every movement measured and graceful. Pearls rested at her throat, and her golden hair had been arranged like a court portrait. Lady Cecily Harcourt. My second daughter. Cecily lowered her eyes with a softer smile. She wore pale blue, with music sheets still tucked beneath one arm. The third woman stood half a step behind them. Her gown was plain charcoal grey. A dark red birthmark crossed the left side of her face from temple to cheek. A thin veil had been pinned over her hair, though it did little to hide what Lord Harcourt wished the room would ignore. He did not speak her name. Duke Rowan Ashbourne waited. And your third daughter? Harcourt's mouth tightened. She was never given a name that mattered. The young woman raised her chin. My mother called me Eleanor. Rowan looked at the 2 women their father had prepared him to admire. Then he turned toward the one the man had tried to erase. Then Eleanor is the name I would like to hear. Silence settled over the drawing room. Eleanor did not thank him. She met his gaze with the eye that saw him clearly and said, Your Grace. That restraint interested him. Rowan had come because Benedict owed Ashbourne a considerable sum. A marriage between the families would prevent Harcourt Manor from being broken apart and sold. During tea, Arabella spoke elegantly about charitable societies. Cecily played the pianoforte. Eleanor remained near the window, shifting her chair whenever the afternoon light struck the weaker side of her face. Rowan noticed other things. When a maid entered with a trembling tray, Eleanor moved a vase before it could be knocked over. When the butler misplaced a letter, she named the ledger beneath which it had fallen. She concerns herself with matters beyond her position. Eleanor turned toward her father. My position changes whenever the household requires unpaid work. Arabella looked. Cecily's expression tightened, but neither spoke. At dinner, Benedict placed a leather folder beside Rowan's plate. The marriage settlement. Either Arabella or Cecily will bring the eastern acreage as her dowry. The land appeared valuable. Fertile fields, a mill, and several tenant cottages. Eleanor spoke from the far end of the table. There are 114 families living there. Benedict's knife stopped against his plate. You were not invited to advise the Duke. No. I was invited so the room would contain 3 daughters while only 2 were permitted to exist. Cecily drew a sharp breath. Leave the table, Benedict ordered. Rowan kept his attention on Eleanor. What does the agreement allow him to do? Benedict rose. She has no education in law. But she has read the document. Eleanor came forward and placed one finger beside a paragraph in smaller script. This clause returns control of the tenants' leases to my father for 6 months after the marriage. He may remove them, clear the cottages, and sell the land without reducing the dowry. Rowan read it again. She was correct. Benedict called it a standard provision, but the steward, when summoned, admitted that Eleanor had managed the estate accounts for nearly 3 years. The figures Benedict had quoted were hers. After dinner, Rowan found her alone in the library replacing ledgers. You saved me from signing a dishonest agreement. I saved 114 families from being removed before winter. He accepted the correction. Your father brought me here to choose a wife. So I gathered. I will not choose Arabella or Cecily. Her hand paused on the ledger. I choose you. She did not blush or smile. She studied him with cautious disbelief. The library door opened. Benedict stood on the threshold. You cannot marry her. Rowan faced him. That decision belongs to Eleanor. No. It belongs to the law. Benedict laid a thin parish register on the table. She was never entered in the baptismal record. There is no certificate of birth, no legal acknowledgement, no proof that she is my daughter. She cannot sign a marriage settlement because officially Eleanor Harcourt does not exist. Pain showed in Eleanor's expression. Rowan turned to her. Then take my name. Her answer was quiet but immediate. I have spent 27 years being told I do not exist without a man's permission. I will not solve that by accepting another man's name before the world acknowledges mine. She left before either man could stop her. Near midnight, Cecily entered Eleanor's room carrying a small wooden box tied with faded green ribbon. "I should have given you this years ago," she whispered. Across the front were 6 words, "For my daughter Eleanor Grace." The paper had yellowed at the edges, but Lady Marian's handwriting remained clear. "My dearest daughter, your name is Eleanor Grace Harcourt. I chose Eleanor for courage and grace because I pray the world will show you what it so often withholds from women who appear different. Let no one persuade you that your face is a punishment or that my death was caused by your birth. You entered this world loved." Eleanor stopped reading. For 27 years, Benedict had allowed her to believe that her mother had refused to look at her. Whenever she asked about the night she was born, he said Lady Marian had turned away in grief and never spoken her name. Cecily sat beside her on the bed. "I found the box behind the lining of Mother's old wardrobe," she said. "Father ordered the room cleared after her death, but Nurse Palmer hid several things." "How long have you had it?" 3 years. Eleanor looked toward her. Cecily began to cry. "I told myself I was waiting for the right moment. The truth is that I was afraid of him. You watched him call me nothing while carrying proof that Mother named me." "I know." Eleanor folded the letter carefully. Anger rose inside her, but it was too old and too deep to be spent on Cecily alone. "Fear may explain silence," she said. "It does not make silence harmless." Cecily nodded, accepting the judgment. The following morning, Eleanor showed the letter to Rowan in the library. He read it twice, then examined the faint reference near the bottom to a private baptism arranged through the village church. "This is enough," he said. "I can have your name entered into the parish register today." "No." He looked up. "I know the bishop. If Harcourt interferes, I will bring the matter before a magistrate. And everyone will say I became Eleanor Grace because the Duke wished to marry me. You have your mother's letter. I had my mother's name before you arrived. I need the record restored because it is true, not because you have the power to make it convenient." Rowan's right hand trembled slightly against the table. He closed it around the edge of the letter. "I am trying to help. You are trying to finish the problem quickly. Is that so terrible? It is when finishing it matters more than understanding how it was done." Her refusal frustrated him, though he concealed it better than Benedict would have. Rowan had spent most of his life solving problems by issuing orders, signing documents, or placing his title behind those who needed protection. Eleanor had no intention of exchanging one man's control for another man's benevolence. "We find the original evidence," she said. "Then I speak for myself." They searched the parish archives first. The baptismal register contained entries for Arabella and Cecily, but the page covering the month of Eleanor's birth had been removed cleanly from the binding. The current rector claimed to know nothing about it. The old household accounts proved more useful. Eleanor found payments made to a midwife, a physician, and Reverend Thomas Hale during the week following her birth. A second payment to Hale appeared 1 month later, followed by an unexplained sum marked only as relocation expenses. Rowan stood beside her at the desk, careful to remain on the side where she could see him most clearly. "Your father paid the rector to leave. Or to remain silent." A shaft of afternoon light crossed the page. Eleanor narrowed her right eye and turned away. Without touching her, Rowan moved the lamp and drew the curtain halfway closed. "Is that?" "Yes." He did not congratulate himself for noticing. He simply returned to the accounts. Benedict ordered curtains closed because he disliked seeing her discomfort. Rowan adjusted the room so she could continue working. The distinction mattered. Their next discovery came from Lady Marian's will. A copy held by the family solicitor named all 3 daughters. Arabella and Cecily were each left jewellery and marriage portions. Eleanor Grace was left a small estate called Willowmere, along with a trust intended to fund her education and independence. Someone had drawn a dark line through her name. Arabella entered the library as they examined the transfer records. She wore a travelling dress and carried a stack of receipts from her years at finishing school. "My education was paid from those accounts," she said. Eleanor looked at the figures. So were Arabella's gowns, Cecily's music lessons, and the improvements made to Harcourt Manor. Arabella's face went pale. "All these years, Father said Mother left more for me because I was the eldest. You did not steal it, Eleanor said. I spent it. You were a child. I remained silent as an adult. Arabella placed the receipts on the desk. Cecily appeared behind her. And mine. Eleanor looked between her sisters. For the first time, they did not stand as three women competing for their father's approval. He made us believe there was only enough love and security for one of us at a time, she said. He made us compete for the right to be treated as daughters. Arabella reached for her hand, then stopped, uncertain whether she was welcome. Eleanor closed the distance herself. Later that evening, Rowan found Eleanor in the conservatory. He had removed his glove, and the tremor in his right hand was more visible than usual. You hide it, she said. He glanced down. My father believed a duke's body should never reveal weakness. And society forgives it. They call it evidence of military sacrifice. They forgive weakness in a duke because power makes it appear temporary, Eleanor said. They made my face a crime because I had no power at all. Rowan studied her without pity. I do not think your face is a crime. I know. But you still believed offering your name could repair what was done to mine. He accepted the correction. I was wrong. It was the first apology Benedict had ever taught her not to expect from a powerful man. Before either could say more, shouting rose from the entrance hall. Before the assembled household, he declared that Eleanor had never been entered into the Harcourt family because she was not his lawful daughter. He claimed Lady Marian had conceived her with another man. The accusation struck the room into silence. Eleanor is an illegitimate child, Benedict said. A letter written by a frightened woman proves nothing. Cecily stepped forward, trembling but determined. Then perhaps this does. She carried a miniature portrait of Lady Marian that had hung in her room since childhood. While removing it from its damaged frame, she had discovered writing on the wooden backing. Rowan held it beneath the lamp. The faded inscription read, Eleanor Grace Harcourt was privately baptized in the presence of Lady Marian Harcourt. Reverend Thomas Hale, witness. Beneath the words was a date, 3 days after Eleanor's birth. Benedict's composure finally broke. Rowan turned toward him. Where is Reverend Hale? Benedict said nothing. The current rector answered instead, Thomas Hale left the parish 26 years ago. No one knows where he went. Eleanor looked at the name written behind her mother's portrait. Somewhere, a man might still be alive who had heard her name spoken before her father erased it. And judging by Benedict's silence, he knew exactly why that man had disappeared. Reverend Thomas Hale was found in a small coastal town 3 days later. He had changed neither his name nor his profession. He served a modest chapel near the harbour, where fishermen's families knew him as a quiet man, who never refused a baptism because a child's parents lacked money. Rowan's investigator returned with Hale's address and a warning that Lord Benedict had already sent 2 men to persuade the old rector to leave England. Eleanor prepared to travel at once. Rowan did not tell her the journey would be too difficult or that her weakened sight made the road unsafe. He simply arranged the carriage so she could sit away from the afternoon glare and asked whether she wanted her sisters beside her. Arabella and Cecily both came. During the journey, Cecily held their mother's portrait. Arabella carried the account books proving that Eleanor's trust had funded their education and dowries. For most of their lives, Benedict had placed the 3 sisters in separate rooms and taught each one to fear what the others might receive. Now they travelled together to recover the name he had stolen from one of them. Thomas Hale received them in the chapel vestry. He was older than Eleanor had imagined, with white hair and hands marked by years of ink and cold weather. When she introduced herself, he stared at her birthmark. Not with disgust. With recognition. Eleanor Grace, he whispered. It was the first time a stranger had spoken her full name as though it had always belonged to her. Hale explained that Lady Marian had feared Benedict would reject the child after seeing her face. 3 days after Eleanor's birth, Marian arranged a private baptism attended by the midwife, Hale, and one trusted maid. Benedict discovered it shortly afterward. He ordered me to remove the page from the register, Hale said. When I refused, he threatened my wife and accused me of stealing church funds. Cowardice, he answered without excuse. I told myself your mother's letter would protect. I did not understand how completely he intended to erase you. Hale had kept a copy of the baptism entry inside his personal Bible. It was enough to establish Eleanor's identity. But before they could return to Harcourt Manor, a messenger arrived from Benedict. A grand ball would be held the following evening. The invitation announced the engagement of Lady Arabella Harcourt to Duke Rowan Ashbourne. Arabella read it twice. He means to force the announcement before we can present the evidence. He cannot force Rowan to marry you, Cecily said. No, Arabella replied. But he can tell society the agreement already exists and call Eleanor an impostor trying to steal her sister's future. Rowan looked toward Arabella. What do you intend to do? For the first time in her life, no one answered for her. Arabella folded the invitation. I intend to disappoint my father. The Harcourt ballroom was crowded when they returned. Benedict had invited every influential family within 50 miles. Musicians played beneath arrangements of white roses, and a ceremonial announcement waited on the table beside him. The guests expected to see Arabella enter in silver silk. Instead, all three sisters appeared together. Arabella wore a simple blue gown. Cecily carried their mother's portrait. Eleanor walked between them without the veil her father had forced her to wear for years. Conversation faded. Her birthmark remained fully visible beneath the chandeliers. Benedict's expression hardened. Arabella, he said, you will take your place beside the Duke. The single word shocked the room more than a scream might have. Benedict turned to Rowan. Your Grace, my daughter is overwhelmed. The engagement may proceed as agreed. No agreement exists, Rowan said. Benedict pointed toward Eleanor. This woman has manipulated all of you. She has no lawful name, no legitimate claim, and no place among my daughters. Rowan stepped forward, but Eleanor raised one hand. Do not speak for me. He stopped immediately. Stand where I can see you, she said. And let me speak for myself. Rowan moved to her right, where her vision was strongest. Then he remained silent. Eleanor faced the room that had been assembled to erase her one final time. My father is correct about one thing, she began. For 27 years, the law held no proper record of me. That absence was not proof that I had no name. It was proof that a powerful man believed he could remove it. She placed Marian's letter on the table. My mother named me Eleanor Grace Harcourt. Cecily set down the portrait, revealing Hale's inscription on the back. Arabella presented the account books and Lady Marian's will. Our mother left Eleanor an estate and an independent trust, Arabella said. Our father took that money and used it for Cecily and me without telling us where it came from. Benedict laughed harshly. Documents can be misunderstood. Marian was ill. Her judgment was unreliable. The ballroom doors opened. Reverend Hale entered beside the village midwife, now an elderly woman supported by a cane. Benedict lost all color. Hale placed his Bible before the magistrate Rowan had invited to witness the proceedings. I baptized this child under the name Eleanor Grace Harcourt, he said. Lord Benedict ordered me to destroy the record. When I refused, he threatened my family and drove me from the parish. The midwife confirmed Marian had held Eleanor throughout the ceremony. She kissed the mark on the child's cheek, the woman said. She told us no daughter of hers would be hidden for entering the world as God had made her. Eleanor had spent her life imagining a mother who turned away. Now she learned Marian had held her close. Benedict struck the table with his hand. You did not protect this family from shame. You taught us to be ashamed of one another. Arabella moved to Eleanor's side. You taught me that beauty was the only reason I deserved security. Cecily joined them. And you taught me that kindness mattered less than obedience. Benedict looked at the three daughters he had kept divided. For the first time, none of them lowered her eyes. The magistrate confirmed that Hale's record, Marian's will, and the midwife's testimony were sufficient to restore Eleanor's legal identity. Benedict would also be investigated for fraud, theft of trust funds, and the destruction of parish records. The announcement shattered his authority more completely than any public insult could have done. Rowan stepped forward only after Eleanor had finished. I came to Harcourt Manor intending to choose a wife, he said. I still hope Eleanor Grace Harcourt will one day choose me. Several guests turned toward her. Rowan did not produce a ring. But I will not ask for her answer until her name, property, and freedom have been restored to everything they were before I entered her life. The following morning, the official register was opened in the magistrate's office. Arabella stood on one side of Eleanor, Cecily stood on the other. Rowan waited several steps behind them. The clerk dipped his pen. What name should be entered? Eleanor looked at the letter her mother had written, then at the two sisters who had finally chosen to stand beside her. The one my mother gave me. The pen touched the page, Eleanor Grace Harcourt. For 27 years, her father had behaved as though refusing to speak her name could make her disappear. Now it stood in permanent ink. And this time, no man in the room had given it to her. The restoration of Eleanor's name did not end the matter. It began it. Within a month, the court confirmed that Willowmere and the remaining trust belonged to Eleanor Grace Harcourt. Benedict was removed from control of the Harcourt accounts while investigators examined the money he had taken from his youngest daughter, and the records he had destroyed. The eastern land intended as a marriage dowry was also placed under review. Eleanor's first decision was not about gowns, carriages, or the house she had inherited. She renewed the leases of all 114 tenant families. No father would be permitted to trade away their homes as part of another daughter's marriage. Arabella returned what remained of her settlement, but Eleanor refused to leave her without security. You did not know where the money came from, Eleanor said. I knew enough to understand that father gave me everything while giving you nothing. And now you know better. Arabella used her portion to establish an independent household rather than enter the marriage Benedict had planned for her. Cecily asked to study estate law so she could help women understand the agreements signed in their names. For the first time, the sisters were not competing for the smallest share of their father's approval. They were deciding what to do with their own lives. Rowan returned to Ashbourne but continued writing to Eleanor. Every envelope was addressed carefully, Miss Eleanor Grace Harcourt. He never called her his future Duchess. He did not write as though her answer had already been given. His letters spoke of ordinary things, the tenants at Ashbourne, the rebuilding of a village school, and the tremor in his hand becoming worse whenever he spent too long signing documents. Eleanor answered under the same name her mother had chosen. When Rowan visited Willowmere several weeks later, he found her in the orchard reviewing repairs with the estate steward. She wore no veil. Sunlight rested openly across the birthmark on her face. He waited until the steward had finished before approaching Miss Harcourt. Your Grace. I had hoped we had progressed beyond formality. We have progressed beyond presumption. That is more useful. A quiet laugh escaped him. His right hand trembled as he offered her a small bundle of papers. They were not marriage documents. They were revisions to Ashbourne's inheritance agreements ensuring that any woman who married into the family retained authority over property held in her own name. Eleanor read the first page. You changed the law of your estate. I changed what was within my power. The rest will require more stubborn people. You expect me to become one of them. I expect nothing from you. Rowan looked toward the orchard, giving her the freedom not to answer immediately. When I first chose you at Harcourt Manor, I believed the decision belonged to me, he said. I thought refusing your father's preferred daughters made me honorable. You also offered me your name as though it could replace my own. I know. And now I understand that being chosen means nothing when a woman is not free to choose in return. He reached inside his coat but did not remove the ring. I still wish to marry you, Eleanor. Not because your father rejected you. Not because society misjudged your face. And not because I believe becoming my wife would prove your worth. Then why? Because you corrected me when I wanted gratitude. Because you protect people who cannot reward you. Because you saw the weakness I conceal and did not mistake it for all of me. His hand trembled again. Eleanor looked at it, then back at his face. I will not surrender Willowmere. I would not ask it. I will continue managing the tenants. I would be disappointed if you stopped. My name will remain on every document concerning my property. Yes. And when someone praises you for marrying a woman with my face, I will remind them that you married a man who once believed a title made him wiser than he was. This time Eleanor smiled. Rowan removed the ring but kept it in his palm. Months later, the The wedding took place at the same church from whose register Benedict had removed her name. Eleanor wore ivory silk without a veil. The artist commissioned to record the ceremony had been given one instruction: nothing on her face was to be softened, hidden, or corrected. Arabella and Cecily stood beside her. When the clergyman opened the register, he spoke slowly and clearly. Eleanor Grace Harcourt, do you take Rowan Ashbourne? Eleanor heard her entire name before any new title was added to it. For one brief moment, she remembered her mother's letter. You entered this world loved. I do, she said. After the ceremony, a nobleman congratulated Rowan on having the courage to choose a woman society had refused to admire. Rowan's expression cooled. I did not give my wife value by choosing her. He looked toward Eleanor. I merely had the sense to recognize what others refused to respect. Eleanor joined him beneath the church steps, her birthmark visible in the clear afternoon light. She was no longer the unnamed daughter standing behind her sisters. She was Eleanor Grace Harcourt, landowner, sister, wife, and woman in her own right. Only after the world had learned to speak the name her father tried to erase, had she chosen freely to add another beside it.